right, it's time to begin. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this breakout session, Familial Trafficking, the intersection of labor trafficking and domestic violence. My name is Tiffany Howard, and I'm the training coordinator for the Kentucky AIDS Education and Training Center at the University of Kentucky, and I'll serve as moderator for this session. Today, we are pleased to welcome Bukola Oriola. Ms. Oriola is an international public speaker, author, mentor, advocate, entrepreneur, and former member of the U.S. Advisory Council on Human Trafficking, and is now a member of the International Survivors of Human Trafficking Advisory Council, appointed by the Office of Democratic Institutions and Human Rights. She is also an award-winning journalist and a survivor of labor trafficking. She is the founder and executive director of The Innocent Story, a Minnesota-based nonprofit with a mission to advocate for victims and empower survivors of human trafficking and domestic violence. Ms. Oriola has dedicated her life to helping others by sharing her story and offering practical solutions to service providers, clinics, community members, and law enforcement on how to help victims of human trafficking. She is a consultant for the Office for Victims of Crime and the U.S. Department of State. She is the CEO of Bukola Oriola Group. She's an entrepreneur who uses her skills to help others and become entrepreneurs through book publishing and small business creations. Welcome, Ms. Oriola. Please go ahead and get started.
Thank you so much, Ms. Howard. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I will try my best to share some knowledge about the intersection of labor trafficking and domestic violence. And I'm really glad that we are doing that in terms of labor trafficking and domestic violence, because most of the time we always talk about sex trafficking. But we are still going to talk about sex trafficking also today, but with more focus on labor trafficking as it relates to familial trafficking. So I have to do some disclosures before I start. So I have no financial disclosures to declare. And let me see if I can minimize this. Okay. And the need for this subject is because labor trafficking is a human rights crime that is hidden in plain sight. And sometimes it's happening simultaneously with other crimes like domestic violence, sex trafficking, even sexual assault or theft or any other kind of crimes. And first responders and service providers can help victims of labor trafficking access comprehensive services when they are receiving family-related services through proper identification. So sometimes even through family courts, we can identify those who may be experiencing labor trafficking among those people. And the objectives for this training is to help you recognize labor trafficking in a domestic violence situation, identify how to connect victims and survivors to appropriate services, and list how to meet clients' unique needs in a scarce environment. So we're expecting that students will have a better understanding of how to recognize labor trafficking in a domestic violence situation and how to connect them to appropriate services. So I know my bio was read just a few minutes ago, but a little bit more. I was born in Nigeria and I practiced journalism for 6 years before I got an I-class visa to cover the United Nations 60th anniversary and General Assembly in 2005. And then I was 29 years old when I entered the US. And I became a victim of labor trafficking and domestic violence through my husband at the time, who was my trafficker and my abuser taking my earnings. And I didn't know what I was experiencing was domestic violence or was labor trafficking until I got help through a public health nurse. And after learning about what I had experienced, Despite my educational background and career, I was really determined to help others by sharing my story and also using the knowledge to help others around the world. And as a result, I became a subject matter expert providing consultation services to the county, state, federal government, and international government, and also the general public. And I cannot talk about my story without my son. I call him my consolation because it was the one who I used as my life support when I was going through this horrible experience. And I'm really, really grateful to God for giving me this child. And I'm so grateful for this son also, who has been my consolation and my support system as I continue to do this work. So into the subject, what is human trafficking? And you know, there is the federal definition and all kinds of definition, and I'm in Minnesota, but I decided to go look for the Kentucky legislature's definition, since this training is happening in Kentucky. And it's the same. It means when someone is subjected to forced labor or services of commercial sexual activity. That's just like written stuff. But let's come down to the layman. What does human trafficking mean? For a layman to understand, it means when somebody is working, that work could be sex or it could be other work, any other kind of work that somebody is doing, but another person is the one benefiting economically, not the person who is doing that work. Either the work is commercial sexual activity or is some kind of forced labor or services. And labor trafficking, you know, also this is the Trafficking Victim Protection Act definition in written form sourced from the US Department of Human Services. You know, with labor trafficking, yes, even though we have recruitment, transportation, provision, but really what we are looking for when it comes to labor trafficking, and using from my own experience, still is somebody is working and they feel like a slave, working and they are not getting paid. Or they are working and somebody else is the one who is benefiting. They are not benefiting from the work they're doing. They're just walking away and not able to use their own funds. And without going into the details of my experience, in my case, what I was doing was I was braiding hair. And at the time, my husband was collecting all the earnings. When people paid for the services, he collects the money. The people pay to me. So this is one thing to note too, because you may think, oh, is somebody standing there taking the money? Not necessarily. And that is why it is hidden in plain sight. You may be giving the money to the person that is performing the service at the time that you are receiving the service. Once you leave, what happens after that is where the issue is. So in my case, customers will give me the money. They think they give me the money, but I don't keep the money. And also another thing that happened was I was being paid check sometimes, but the check has to be written in his name. So if somebody is providing services, but the money being paid, if it's in a formal way, like check that can be traced, and somebody else, you have to write the check to somebody else, that is a red flag that that person that is providing the service may be experiencing labor trafficking. And for sex trafficking, is similar, but in this case, the person is performing a sexual act, and the sexual act involves money, where somebody else is also the one collecting the money, is the one benefiting. The person who is providing that sexual act is not benefiting from the money. But I would like to note that, you know, when it comes to sex trafficking, if the person is under the age of 18, there is no need for them to prove fraud, force, or coercion, which we are going to get to in a minute. So how does human trafficking happen? According to the federal definition, it can happen as a result of fraud, force, or coercion. Fraud is somebody is promised something, but it's another. In my case, I was promised a marriage and better life. Instead, I became a victim of domestic violence and a victim of labor trafficking, where most of the time I am working. Sometimes I start to work from 6 a.m. and I don't finish at 10 p.m. And I'm so tired, my legs are tired, yet the money made from that work, I could not spend it. And sometimes human trafficking can happen as a result of force. Force is what a lot of people are familiar with, especially when we've seen a lot of movies with kidnapping. Yes, that is one way. With beating, yes, that is one way that somebody else can be forced to become a victim of labor trafficking or sex trafficking. And sometimes some people even use gun. There was a survivor who said the trafficker actually hired somebody to shoot him to make him comply here in the United States. So force can also happen. And coercion is another one. Coercion is so subtle, where somebody is threatening you and telling you if you don't comply, we're going to do this to you, or we are going to turn you over to the law. And if the person is a foreign national, for example, one of those things that is really used against foreign national is the immigration status. Immigration status, even those who have status, meaning some people have permanent residency, they still become victims. Some of them are foreign nationals, but they are naturalized foreign nationals, and they still become victims because they don't know the law, and somebody can just say whatever to them. And a lot of people who come in through visas. In my case, I came in through visas, so I didn't cross the border to enter this country illegally. I came on a visa. There are so many people that come on visas, non-immigrant visas, and that could be used as a weapon against the person to keep them from speaking up or even escaping. And, when we talk about escaping, also it's important to know that, there are so many images out there that put people in chains, that, put tape on people's mouths. Sometimes that is not how it is happening. Sometimes we have those who are victims that are isolated, that are not able to move freely, but we see them every day around us because they're being monitored. They are limited to where they can go. In my case, I couldn't really go anywhere, even though I was in the house, I could open the door and go out. I couldn't go past that outside, even though another thing is brainwashing. I have the key to the house, but I can't even go anywhere, even though I have my own personal key. I can't go out until I'm taken out. So it is sometimes an illusion that you are made to feel and to keep you down and continue to use that mind trick on you. And for those who are US born, when it comes to coercion, sometimes it's, you have theft on your record, or you have felony on your record, or you have a probation officer, I'm going to turn you over. And that will make the person to continue to comply to the trafficking experience. So coming now to familiar trafficking, from that phrase, family. So meaning it is happening within the family system or through somebody who is related or close or is the legal guardian to the person. So, and it could be in exchange for things, sometimes it's in exchange for goods, it's in exchange for all kinds of things. And sometimes, it's just the person is working and the family member is taking the money. That was my case, where I was working and my husband was taking the money. In some other people's cases, they might even be working outside of the home. They might be working, let's say, for example, Kentucky University, somebody is working there. The person might be working there and the family member is the one garnishing the money. We've seen that experience before, where somebody is working, but the family member just goes into the account. As soon as payroll goes through, the all money is withdrawn by this specific name from month to month to month to month. Every week or every 2 weeks that money goes into that account, the money is just taken. So when it comes to familial trafficking, it is within the family. It's happening to the person who is related to the victim or somebody who is a legal guardian to the victim. And it's not necessarily somebody unknown to the victim. And when we talk about familial trafficking, we have to also look at the power and control will. It's kind of similar, domestic violence and trafficking, and especially with labor trafficking. I've mentioned about coercion. Sometimes it's intimidation, is, you know, all those mind tricks being played on you. I was told that I was dumb, that I was stupid. In fact, one of the things my ex did then was that whenever we had visitors and they start talking about politics or they're watching TV and talking about media, it would just make statements like, Nigerian journalists are dummies. While I'm there, and I was a journalist from Nigeria. That is one of the ways to keep me down and make me feel that I am useless. And, you know, I was isolated. The same thing for so many victims. They will be isolated. There is even the economic abuse. And for us to know the difference between economic abuse when it's just domestic violence and economic abuse when it's labor trafficking is that fact that when it's domestic violence, the economic abuse could just be, okay, I'm the breadwinner. I'm the one making the money. I am not going to provide money to you. Or you have to really beg me to give you money. And there is that control. But when it comes to labor trafficking, the economic control is you are working and I'm taking all the money. And little or none of your needs are met. In Minnesota, in cold Minnesota, I did not have winter jackets. In cold Minnesota, I did not have winter boots. I begged customers for food. And I was working, and these people were paying me money, thinking they were paying me money to work. Yet, I was suffering in that house and not being able to spend my own money that I worked for. So when we're working with those who are experiencing domestic violence, we need to be asking them more questions and be seeing what looks like labor trafficking in their case, especially when we want to really find out about the economic abuse to see, okay, what is going on? Is it just holding money or is she just holding money? And also let us understand that this can happen to anybody, either it's male or female. So in my case, I was just the female and my trafficker was the male and who also happens to be my abuser. But it could be female doing that to a male person, or in a relationship where it's in the LGBTQ community. But all those signs are the things we want to look for and see where it's crossing. Sometimes it's threatening with immigration, like I mentioned earlier. Immigration is big when it comes to the immigrant community. Immigration is one of the big things that is being used when it comes to the immigrant community. But when it comes to those who don't have to deal with immigration, most of the time is, you know, something where maybe, oh, I'm going to report you to social services. I'm going to report you to child protection, all different kinds of things like that. And we've seen where, you know, the courts have taken kids from victims. Meanwhile, they are the victims and given the key to the traffickers. So all these are very, very important to pay attention to when we are working with folks who are going through domestic violence, going through battered women's shelter, or they are going through the family court system, or even those who are receiving public benefits. It's very, very important to be asking questions to know whether those people are experiencing labor trafficking. Sometimes you may have somebody come to ask for economic assistance and may be wondering, oh, okay, but you are making this income. Where is the money going to? That's a red flag there to start asking questions. Where is the money going to? Are they keeping the money, or their partner is the one really keeping that money? And what labor trafficking can look like in a domestic violence situation. So the person is working, like I said earlier, and the family member or guardian is the one taking all the money. And the person's activity is controlled by this family member. In my case, I could not go out. I didn't know how to drive, so I depended on him to go anywhere. And if he wanted to punish me by not taking me out, I will be in the house. Sometimes I'm in the house for 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks without going out. I was going crazy. And I attempted suicide because I felt like there was no use living here when I was suffering, and it looked like there was no help to get me out of this misery. And also, he was so good at lying to people, so I was always being blamed and blamed and blamed, and it just became so hard. And that was why I said, my son was my consolation, and he's still my consolation, because it was him that didn't make me kill myself. So victims are not able to access, healthcare, or their healthcare access is limited or is controlled. For me, I remember one of the things that happened was that even though it took me to prenatal clinic to get registered as a pregnant woman, but it never took me to appointments. But luckily, there was the insurance ride. So I relied heavily on the insurance ride to be able to get to some of my appointments. And I also was not able to make decisions for myself. So many decisions is the one making the decisions. So sometimes that are the things that we are looking for when we are working with someone who may be experiencing domestic violence, but are also experiencing labor trafficking. And who are the professionals that are likely to come in contact with those who have this experience? So if you are a healthcare professional, you are more than likely. Please, when we go to the clinic, we see all these posters on the wall about, either is, rainbow, eat vegetables, eat this, eat color food for good diet. Let's begin to put clues for victims to know that this is a safe place to ask for help, without necessarily saying, oh, call this number, this is a safe place to ask for help. Let's begin to put clues on there. We did a training for healthcare professionals on labor trafficking. And one of the things we did was, we did a list of signs to look out for, or even questions to ask, but we framed it up so it doesn't look like, it's something that it's not for decoration, just looks like a decoration on the wall. But then the staff can use that to, interject 1 or 2 questions to know whether something may be going on there to help this person. Urgent care. And, some of these places I listed, I went through them. I went to antenatal clinic, I went to urgent care, even when I was 27 weeks pregnant and was taken to the hospital by an ambulance, and I got to the hospital and they couldn't find anything wrong at the hospital. They just let me go that night. When I had a baby with C-section, I did not want to leave the hospital. That was a sign that those healthcare professionals could have picked up. That why will somebody not want to leave the hospital? In fact, my colleague just had a baby 2 weeks ago, and she was telling me that, as soon as she had that baby, the next day she wanted to leave the hospital, and the surgeon said, hey, wait, we need to check you and make sure we can release you first. So who now have a baby at the hospital and want to stay in the hospital? That is a red flag, and that is a sign. That is somebody speaking to you without necessarily saying it to you that, hey, you know, I don't want to go back to that place. Don't let me go back there. But they release me without asking questions. So reproductive health care, social services, week. I was receiving week. Those who are receiving week, we need to start asking questions. Those who are going through the economic assistance program, those who are going through the adult basic education programs, you know, we need to start using those avenues to ask questions. Battered Women's Shelter, I went to the Battered Women's Shelter. We need to be asking questions. The family court, law enforcement, police officers, you know, I interacted with police officers, but they saw me as the criminal at the time that I was going through my experience. So sometimes as a law enforcement, you will think the victim is the one you are protecting, but you are protecting the perpetrator. Sometimes the perpetrator is using law enforcement to threaten, and that was what happened in my case. He kept using law enforcement to threaten, and he just called the police on me. And I was almost arrested. So, and then we have ambulance. Ambulance came to pick me up. Firefighters. You know, firefighters have unique rules, especially those ones who do education. Those firefighters that do education, you're able to go into people's homes. When you go into homes, look for non-verbal communication from those people in those homes, because you might be the one that will help somebody. And with my personal experience, without going through into the detail, I've shared, you know, some of the examples in my own experience. And why I didn't know, and the cover of my book, Have Me Peeping Through the Window, that was what I was doing for 2 years, peeping through the window. And sometimes I'm peeping and hoping that I could just disappear. But I couldn't go anywhere. I was just stuck there in that house, suffering for 2 years, working and not able to use my own money to buy anything for myself. And this was me who used to be independent, who was earning my own income and spending my money however I like, to working but not able to spend that money, not having access to that money. Where after I have worked, well, let's say they paid in check, and it goes to the bank to put the check in, it will tell me the check will clear within 3 to 4 days. After 3 or 4 days, if I ask for the money, it will tell me you are living in free house in America. You are eating free food in America. You are watching free TV. Which money are you asking for? And that is where the conversation will end. And I didn't have warm clothes. It was one of his friends who visited from the UK during winter that bought me my first winter jacket in Minnesota. And the man also gave me his shirt. I still have that shirt. It was a turtleneck burgundy colored shirt, long sleeves. And he told me, Bukola, I've only worn this shirt like 2 or 3 times, you can have it. If I had clothes, will a man see me and give me his clothes to wear? And the man was the one who also bought me my first winter jacket. So there are things to watch out for us to be able to know more what somebody may be experiencing. And there are help available, although when it comes to labor trafficking, help is very, very limited. Meanwhile, when we are looking at some data of people coming through, even with our own organization at the Anytime Story, majority of the clients we serve have experienced labor trafficking. And here we can see that even with the Trafficking Victims Assistance Program, they served more labor trafficking victims who are foreign nationals in 2009. That program is for those who are foreign nationals, but I'm sure that Catholic Charities or Bakita Empowerment, and I found this, that these services in Kentucky can serve those who have experienced labor trafficking and they are residents in Kentucky. And for the Trafficking Victims Assistance Program, they serve everybody because it's a federal program geared towards foreign nationals. And the reason is because foreign nationals, especially, it's not only undocumented, especially if you are not a citizen or permanent resident, you are limited at receiving public benefits. So the Trafficking Victim Assistance Program is able to provide some kind of financial relief to take care of some of the basic needs of those who may have experienced labor trafficking or sex trafficking. So and that brings me to the end of my presentation. Please, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Oriola. That was an amazing presentation. If you guys have questions, please feel free to type those into the chat box and I will read those off as they come in. I would like to start us off, Ms. Oriola, with a question I have just listening to your presentation. What are some of the myths you think that we hear just, as regular citizens about human trafficking?
One of the myths we hear is that human trafficking is something that is happening to third world country people, or is happening to people who are in dysfunctional home. But human trafficking can happen to about anybody. When we are talking about fraud, force or coercion, fraud especially, have you had an experience where somebody said something to you and you believed them at that moment, but later on you found out that they lied to you? So it means that anybody could be lied to, anybody could be deceived. So it can happen to about anybody, not only those who are from dysfunctional home. Are some people more vulnerable? Yes. We have those who are, run away, those who have lived in a home where there has been history of domestic violence, those in the LGBT community, because, some people, because they come out, their family members may kick them out. Those who, because of their immigration status, somebody is using it against them. Those are just vulnerabilities, but it doesn't mean that it cannot happen to anybody, either from rich home or from poor home.
Thank you for that. Michelle Sams has a question. If a parent takes the money of their teen who is working, is that considered trafficking?
It could be trafficking. Yes, because I have a teen too, and I cannot take his money. It could be. So, but we have to look. It's not just one thing we will look at. We have to look at, maybe I need more context. If you're just taking the money, because that was what happened with one of the cases we worked on, where the parent was just taking the money. The child could not access any money and couldn't get things for themselves. They have to be begging friends and borrowing money to get basic things for themselves. So if a parent is doing that, that could be labor trafficking.
All right. The next question is, hold on one second, let me scroll back up. We got a lot of questions coming in. It's from Stephanie. Do you think banking institutions could be another type of organization that could develop indicators to detect possible trafficking?
Oh, God bless you for that question. Yes. It would be so nice if, banks could start, because it looks like Homeland Security is doing some trainings with banks, but even banks at the local level, where somebody comes in, you see, when somebody will come to deposit check, for example, in their account, you can just start a simple conversation like, oh, nice check, or you, in order not to look like you are prying too much, start paying attention to how people are putting money in their accounts. Whether this person, they pull money in, that, oh, this one is direct pay, is from this company, is regular coming from that company. But then they bring in check. They bring in a check today from this person, they bring in a check tomorrow from that person, and it doesn't look like that check is being written to a business, whether they have their own business. That's why they're getting, different checks from different people. So that will start a question as to, what do you do? Do you do like other jobs that people pay you money to kind of begin to see? And then sometimes you may even see that the person, because sometimes, like for me, in my case, when we're going to the bank, sometimes we take me with him to deposit the check. I'm there, but I'm just there in the background. So do you see somebody coming in over and over, and there is somebody with them like a handbag? So you just want to keep looking for that non-verbal cues going on with the individual, and start paying more attention to, how people are transacting when it comes to depositing money in the account. Or you see someone, because, for example, it could even be Zelle. Now that we have Zelle, Cash App, and all of that, it could be Zelle that you just notice that money is being Zelle to this specific account from this specific account every 2 weeks. That could be a red flag to watch out for, because we've seen that. Thank you.
All right, we have another question. Barbara Cruz says, how to talk to an acquaintance that you hear talk about their husband making her go to a house and have sex with other men, and she doesn't want to. How do I have a discussion with her, or should I only report it, and to who?
Oh, thanks. So the husband says, let's go to this house to have sex with somebody so they can take care of themselves. And that is, sex trafficking. Selling that woman to make money. I know it can be hard, but it's not something you want to force. First of all, what you want to work on is that person's dignity and confidence. You want to build their self-esteem. So you want to be telling them positive things about themselves, how smart they are, how intelligent they are, how beautiful they are, and how it's important that they take their own power. And if they're the one telling you that is happening to them, you also want to let them know that they can get help. Because one of the reasons why victims will stay, even though they are not happy, they will continue to stay, is because they don't know that they can get help. Or people have failed them. People will promise, I'm going to help you, but then they don't get help. And then it's going to be more trouble for them. Sometimes it may be that the person has something against them that is using, like the blackmail. You want to assure them that they can get help regardless of one. And perhaps they have, records. You want to also use that record to let them know that the record has nothing to do with them getting help. They can get help. And if you are finding out that you are talking to them, but they're not doing anything, you can't force. Just keep talking. They will make up their mind one day and take that step. I didn't take help immediately. I learned that I could get help. It was when I had to jump from the frying pan into the fire that I took the help. And now working with others who have the same experience, I see the same thing happening, where I have to just keep making sure I'm focusing all my energy and using words that empower that individuals. Even sometimes I will say something and they will repeat it. You know, that is telling me that they too are trying to build their confidence to know that yes, they are smart, they are good, they can make good decisions for themselves, and they will not get into trouble for making good decisions for themselves. So it's really mindset thing and the power to choose. Somebody whose power has been taken from them, it takes a long time to get that power back. Thank you.
All right, the next question is from Cheyenne Mansfield. It kind of goes along with Stephanie's question about banks. What about motels and hotels having education about knowing the signs of trafficking? Are there any programs out there that help educate other organizations about knowing the signs of human trafficking and how to report it?
Yes, so the Anytime Story, we do trainings that I'm doing here. And Minnesota Department of Health happened to create a training specifically for hotels and motels. So I could find that information and send it to Tiffany to share with the audience after this session.
All right, thank you for that. If you guys have any other questions, please feel free to type those into the chat box. We still have a little bit of time left. So I do have another question just to talk about, you had mentioned the different vulnerabilities. What could we look for just, if I'm at the grocery store, is there specific signs I can look for in people that are shopping at the same time, even though I don't know them?
Yes, okay, so you mentioned grocery store, and what came to my mind was a picture of me at the grocery store when I was pregnant and craving. And I wanted to pick banana, and he yelled at me right there. Why do you want to get money for banana? And even up to now, how much is banana a pound? It's not $5 a pound for banana, even organic banana. So sometimes, some things, and there were people there. I felt so ashamed. So things like that will happen in front of us. We may see it and we just keep going about our business. That could be a sign that, hey, this person may need help. Something may be going on with these people. And I know when the person is with another individual, it's really hard to try to slip something and information to them or let them know they can get help. But what we can do too is, even grocery stores can participate in training and learning, because the grocery store is the neighborhood store. So you are likely to have the person come back to the store. You are likely to have people, who come to shop at that store to come back again after a week or after 2 weeks or after a month, but you will see them, you keep seeing them coming back to that store. So as they keep coming back to that store, if you happen to be a grocery store staff, then you can be watching to see, when is the right time to try to strike a communication with this person, to even just say hello. Because I also find out that American culture is different from my culture, where even you don't greet your neighbor. You see your neighbor and you act like as if you don't see that neighbor. Even some neighbors you greet and they do not even respond back to you. So how do we really want to get people to help them or even reach out when they see a short window to reach out for help? So in that grocery store situation, all you can do is maybe to say hello to that person. you will not really be able to give them any information if they are with the person who may be their trafficker, because you may put them into trouble and you may put yourself into trouble too. And we do not want that.
Thank you. I hate to take up all the time. I have one more question. So I work at the Bluegrass Care Clinic in Lexington. I don't work directly with the patients, but I would like to ask, what are some things that you could suggest as far as staff at the clinic when they come into contact with patients that they think may be involved in trafficking?
So ask questions. When they come in, you're asking, okay, you are checking the BP, right? As you are checking the BP, sometimes they're checking the BP and asking you questions. Have you eaten today? What did you have? You know, just like you're asking that question. Have you eaten today? What did you have? They're answering that question. Then you can ask them, do you work? Where do you work? Do you like your job? What kind of job do you do? What's your day like? You know, without telling me how much you earn, do you like how much you earn? Do you get to keep your money? You know, so without asking it like you are investigating, ask in a conversational manner where it's not like, oh, this person is investigating me or asking me questions. And when they are US citizens, you know, it may be fine, but when they are foreign nationals, you don't know whether they have residency or not. So asking questions about job can make them to feel like, oh, it's immigration. So you also want to create an environment or let them know upfront that, you know, you are not immigration and you do not interact with immigration. So whatever they're going to be talking about with you is confidential. That was one thing the public health nurse said to me over and over. Each visit, she tells me that whatever I said to her was confidential. Whatever I said to her was confidential. And that was why she was the one I reached out to when I wanted to jump from the frying pan into the fire. So creating the environment is very, very important also for the victim and the healthcare professional to be able to know how to really help them. And this was the thing we developed. I don't know if you can see. This was the thing we developed for healthcare professionals, and we put in it, you know, what steps to take if you find out that, oh, there may be potential victim, the next step to take. Or if they wouldn't disclose, the next step to take. Or if they disclose, but they're not ready to get help, what step to take. There is nothing wrong in following up. They do call us, you know, and say, hey, we are following up on this with you. And when you call to follow up, because sometimes somebody might be on the other line and pretend like the person, then you might ask them, the follow-up will be not to divulge anything on the phone or say about, oh, what we discussed, we just want to, the follow-up will be another appointment to come back to the clinic, where you'll be able to talk more to them or bring in a social service provider like the editor story to have talk with this person. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you very much. Those are things that I hadn't even thought about. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So it doesn't look like we have any more questions currently. So I just want to say thank you so much, Ms. Oriola. This was very informational. I really appreciate it. Even just as a lay person, these are things that I can take with me in my everyday life. So thank you for that. And thank you guys so much for joining us. Let's see. Again, there are people in the chat saying thank you so much. Great presentation.
Thank you.
So this concludes this breakout session. Up next, we will have a 15-minute break followed by the closing keynote at 2:30. If you want to visit the CE Central website for the links to each session, gosh, I keep getting pop-ups on my computer. If you want to visit the CE Central website for the links for each session, you can do so. I will put a link in the chat. And again, we really appreciate your time and hope you have a great rest of your day and enjoy the rest of the conference. I am going to copy and paste that link into the chat right now for CE Central. Enjoy your break. Please come back and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you guys so much for attending. We appreciate your time. And again, thank you, Ms. Oriola. If you guys have any questions that we did not get to, please feel free to reach out to Drew Ritzel, and he will get those to Ms. Oriola. Thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.